I was very impressed with the 60-minute presentation. I think it was 3 weeks ago. They actually had the CEO of Google talking about their efforts in AI. And also there was a firm that they acquired in Boston 5 years ago that was doing some remarkable things too. So I just found it fascinating. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Hope you'll enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again. So I guess at this point,
Riveting.
absolutely. And ironically, I'm sorry Mike Ungerman isn't here because he and I have discussed often the Isaac Asimov 3 laws of robotics. And he's a famous science fiction writer who wrote, I guess, in 1975, that sort of thing. And a book that he wrote, I, Robot, I just saw a movie made in 2004 starring Will Smith and Bridget Moynihan, who's gone on to Boston Public. She played a scientist, and there was a robot that got to the founder of the robotic company at that time, because somebody had put a worm in the program and the robots were ready to take over the earth. And that's the possibility that they were hinting at here, that it has to be social and moral, and unfortunately politics is going to come into it, because any laws that have to be made regarding the way they are programmed, I think has to go through a Congress. I mean, I found it fascinating. The chap who deep minds, I thought was in Boston for some reason, but you know, he seemed brilliant, and what he came up with, the soccer plays and the chess and that sort of thing. Let's hear what others of you think.
Joe, you have your hand up.
Yeah, the iRobot novel was significantly different than the movie, trust me. And it was done back in the, I don't know, I think in the 50s, when he came up with this concept of the 3 rules. For those that don't know it, the first rule is that a robot cannot harm or allow to come to harm any human being under any circumstances. Number 2, it has to do whatever any human being says unless it violates rule number 1. And number 3 is it has to protect itself unless it violates number 2 or 1. So that's a priority of the rules. I mean, that's in a nutshell. That it's a lot more than just that, but that's kind of my summary of it. At any rate, so, but those are that's the story about that particular item there. But yeah, the stuff about, you know, who's going to determine what morality is, what proper morality is. You know, in some cultures, one thing is okay, but in another culture, it's not okay. And who is doing the training of the system? I mean, if it's getting this information off the internet, it's going to be a little confused, because it's going to have all this cross-cultural stuff. That's the question I have. How is it going to determine which one is the right answer? That's it.
Okay, any other comments?
I thought the term hallucination, where it would invent answers, it invented the names of books just because it felt like it needed the names, and it turns out they didn't exist.
One of the things that folks may not be all that aware of is that with both Bard and with Chat Bing or Bing Chat, however you want to say it, if you don't like the response or if you find it hallucinating or something like that, what you can do is you can let it know that you're not happy with the response. There's a system whereby in Bard it's usually at the end of its response it's got a thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you give it a thumbs down it'll say, what did I do wrong? And you can tell it what you thought about it. The one inside of Bing Chat is a little more difficult. I had to root around for it. It's somewhere. I think it's on the top. It's been a while since I had to use that. But they want feedback, like he said in the video. The reason we're releasing this is because we want to get the feedback from people. We want to find out what the weak points are. We want to find out what the strong points are. And if people just complain amongst ourselves and say, gee, this, I asked it for this and it didn't do it. I asked it for that, it didn't do that. It's not going to learn. It's not going to grow. It's not going to get better. So what you have to do is whenever it does have a response that's not correct, you have to let it know. And that's one of the things about it that is important. And the other thing is it's kind of funny because we're so used to people, human beings, having an ego. It doesn't have an ego. You can say, tell me 5 things, like a job interview. You can say, tell me 5 things that you can't do. Tell me 5 things that, would be considered a weakness in this job position. And it'll tell you the things that it can't do. And you can say, is this better than that? And it doesn't matter what the product is. If it's, even though Microsoft paid for a whole bunch of Bing Chat, if there's a product that's better than a Microsoft product, it'll tell you so. I'm sure Microsoft doesn't like that, but it's really cool in that respect. There's lots of things that it can do for you.
I've been not only in the chat parts, but I've been playing with the text to image, and it's amazing what you can do and what you and the thoroughness that you can make it. The prompt is the statement you put in there or what you're looking for, and that's so important. But that's also important in the when you're doing just plain text, when you're asking it something. How you ask it can make a big difference on the kind of answer you're going to get. But the nice thing about the chat part is if it doesn't come back with the right answer, it remembers what it told you, remembers what you asked, and you can say, well, what about this part? And it continues on. You're not like in search, where every time you ask it a question, you've got to explain from the beginning. It doesn't remember what you asked in the last question, and it's just amazing what you can do with it.
And Huey, you mentioned the text to image. The image behind me on my virtual background was created with a AI art generator.
Mm-hmm.
We created that.
Yeah, and I've been working with trying to get more realistic things so I can use it when I'm doing a presentation. If I'm talking about a group of people in an audience, I want a picture of the audience, and so I'll say a group of older people and describe where they are and what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes I surprisingly get some pretty good results, and sometimes it's way off.
Well, you also need to think of this as a conversation that you're having with another person, as opposed to doing an individual one question at a time.
Mm-hmm. Is that somebody's TV or radio, or is somebody asking a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's the basketball game coming on.
Any other comments? What are your thoughts on all of this? Have you tried it or not tried it? Why haven't you? Or have you, do you know somebody who has, or and for whatever reason, are you afraid of it? Anyone? Peter?
I can't say that I'm afraid of it, but I think, and not specifically a comment about the 60 Minutes piece, but I think this is going to be a bigger change to society than anything previous. I think it is going to have a massive change on the way the world is. Part of what I see happening, which really isn't very insightful if you think about it, is the good guys will get their hands on this technology and use it for good things, and the bad guys will get their hands on this technology and use it for bad things. And the ability of government, whether it's local, state, or federal, to regulate that is going to be very limited. I don't think they'll be very successful. They'll be successful in regulating, as we discussed a little earlier, copyright type issues. Can you put this 60-minute piece on your website? I think that's child's play compared to what's going to happen. Not to get political, but I think AI of the nature that can generate audio and video is going to be very widely used in the 2024 presidential election to generate misinformation, manipulate what people think about things. I think this is going to change the world more than anything else that I can remember studying in history classes. And that is both good and bad. I spent many years as a marketing consultant, and I can tell you that, anybody who worked in marketing knows that the number one key word is the word new. What do American or worldwide consumers want? They want something new, new, but don't change anything. So, that's going to be something that AI is going to have to deal with. But I'm very concerned about its potential effects on society in the negative direction. And I don't see any governmental body that is in a position to regulate it properly. Not that we know what properly is yet, but some of my thoughts.
Well, to touch on that point, the same thing. You're absolutely right. There's going to be folks use things in a positive way and folks that use things in a negative way. And I don't want to get political about it either, but you can take a thing like a gun. A gun can be used to get you food, but a gun can be used to do damage to another human being who doesn't deserve to have damage done to them. One is a good use, the other is a negative use. And the same thing is true of this. Now they've built in some things. They showed the example there of how do I build a Molotov cocktail, and it wouldn't let it said I can't answer that question. The thing is, once this process becomes available to the general public, 90% of the internet is dark web, the web that we don't see. And the bad players are going to have access to this, and they are not going to be under the same kind of restrictions that the people on the surface web are operating under. So exactly. They will be able to get at this and use those negative features. One of the things that I found with the art to, or text to art is that they are very concerned about people using these text to art for lascivious purposes, if you will. And you have to be very careful. I just participated in a text to art challenge, and they wanted to have something that would require an adult talking with children and passing on their wisdom. Well, if you try to use young boy or young girl, it says, no, 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 you can't do that. You can't use those words to create a picture. We won't do that. You have to use some other way of getting a young person into your image because they don't want to have any pedophiles or predators creating images that are negative in nature. So yeah, there's going to be that problem.
I think there's so many ways, and I can't even begin to think of 99% of them, but one of the ways in which it's going to change the world, change society, change how we think is it is going to blur the lines between being alive and being dead. The fact that someone has just died has implications that most of us are well aware of. But I think the fact, after AI becomes very widespread, the fact that someone has died will, it doesn't mean that if their name is Paul McCartney, that just because he died or something, doesn't mean that he or his former essence can't continue to write songs or any artistic type of endeavor. It doesn't mean that just because your friend or family member has died, it no longer will mean that you can no longer have a conversation with them. I think that's I don't even know that my brain is capable of assimilating all of that yet, but that's clearly going to happen. I mean, if we can simulate their image and we can simulate their voice and their mannerisms, then we don't need the live version of them anymore. The AI version of them will be just as good, maybe better.
And with the ability of the deep fakes that we have now,
yes,
they're already talking about making movies with Humphrey Bogart, making movies with actors that are no longer around. There was talk about contracting Bruce Willis's image because he's disabled now, so that he could still make films. That I think is kind of in a rumor mill, but the potential is there in the very near future to do these things. It's not far off.
As
so
I
we
think
see new movies with Audrey Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart and Gary Cooper and all those guys.
Well, speaking as a big-time Beatles fans, I could tell you that I am looking forward to the next Beatles album, which will feature a number of songs sung by and written by John Lennon.
It can happen.
When you talk about regulation of anything to do with AI, with the pace that we have regulations being implemented or determined, they're so slow, they'll be so far behind AI. AI will outstrip them 1,000,000 to 1.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the problems with all this stuff. Human beings are evolutionary, but technology is revolutionary. And trying to make people adapt to that is very difficult. And we found that out in 1940s when we knew we could make a nuclear weapon, and we did. But nobody asked, should we? Today, they're asking. As a matter of fact, Einstein, before he died, said that he regretted telling people how to do that. So it took that long to discover that you shouldn't do some things. The other thing that I have to say is that someone asked about making a Molotov cocktail in either the video or somewhere, and ChatGPT said, "Oh, I can't tell you to do that because it's dangerous." But if you say to it, "Is alcohol used in making a Molotov cocktail?" it will turn around and tell you exactly how to make a Molotov cocktail. So there's ways of getting around all of the AI. Thank you.
I don't know that you'll have to get around it because maybe ChatGPT has the morality built into it, not to tell you how to make a Molotov cocktail, but somebody else's AI will not have that. It'll just tell you, and that's the one the bad guys will get.
How about some of you other people that haven't chimed in? I know there's a couple of you who have asked me in some emails and so on about AI and you're concerned. You were concerned about it. I happen to be on the other end of it. I think it's exciting, and yeah, there's bad everywhere's. Everything, even the internet, started out as a great idea, but we've got bad things, and we learn how to try to control them as best we can, and how to fight it. But it's going to happen. Of course, the problem with the AI is it can be much more serious than what we've been used to. But I'm excited because I think it just gives us so many more things that we can do. And, I showed you that instead of trying to go to a bunch of websites to figure out an answer to something, you can just ask it a question. It'll give you the answer. Now you got to check to see if that answer is accurate. I had something that I asked the other day, and I said, give me 5 places to find the answer, and 3 of them don't exist anymore. They were probably good for what I wanted, but the websites aren't there anymore. So it only knows what it knows and what it can figure out. And a lot of people have a lot of concerns, and some people they don't quite know what it is, so they kind of block it out. I've got a lot of neighbors that if they could, and some of them still do, have flip phones, and that's all they want. They don't want a smartphone. And I think there's a lot of people who either don't know what AI is, or they don't want to know what it is, because they know it's something that they're not going to understand in the beginning, and they just don't want to be bothered with it.
On that point, at the end of the WinSig, there were 48 participants on the bottom of my Zoom screen. There are now 28. So that points out that there are people, Mother's Day, and, life goes on. I frankly have not tried that much of it myself because I got my pool is acting up. I might have to replace almost $1,000 worth of equipment. I've had the medical event where I'm getting MRIs and CT scans, and it's just too much going on to spend much time on it. But I thought that the participation of Joe and Peter was very interesting and thought-provoking, and let's keep it rolling as long as we want. But thank you all for participating and coming.
Diane has her hand up. Di?
Hi. Yeah, well, I'm one of those that's interested, but I also have my concerns, but I guess more on a lighter subject. I would like to know what is the program or part of AI that I go into that would create the image?
Night Cafe is what I use.
Yeah, I use that one as well.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it I need to do now?
It's called Night Cafe, one word.
Okay, so I just Google that or look it
Yeah.
up, right?
And,
I think it's nightcafe.ai.
and I don't know, Huey, is it okay for me to mention a workshop I'm doing?
Sure, by all means.
Okay. Next week, Tuesday, not this Tuesday, but next week, Tuesday, I'll be doing a workshop on an introduction to Night Cafe. You can get there by going to getsetup.io. I can put that in the chat if you want.
Yeah, please.
Yes, would
And
you
then
do
just
that?
looking up the term NetSpeak, because that's kind of the overall name of the workshops I run, and sign up for the one that's going to be on May 20. What is that? May 25th or 23rd? I think it's May
23rd.
Yeah, May
Uh-huh.
23rd. Yeah. And you'll be welcome to come. You have to register in advance. They'll ask you for your email address, and you have to create a password so they can, make you a regular
Okay.
part of our system and all that kind of good stuff. But that's about it. So I'll put that information in the chat for you. Okay.
Okay, I'm looking for it. Thank you.
All righty.
Stephanie, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I think basically, we may not be able to control the speech itself, but we can control things that have bad effects. So, you have free speech, but you're not entitled to be fraudulent and things like that. Or to, steal somebody else's property. There are all kinds of ways you can do things by the result in addition to trying to prevent the stuff in the first place.
Yeah, the EU has been probably the most active on some of that, where they've made it so they've done certain restrictions and so on. I don't think there are many people in our government that know enough about it to, and of course our government doesn't work too fast either. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but we'll just have to see.
I think we should spend a lot of time looking at what the EU does, because they have a lot of people who are dealing with lots of problems, which are our problems as well.
Yep. Ellen, you're next.
I'm looking at the possibility of using Chat GPT or other AI tools to look at our laws. Well, so often we end up with unintended, unanticipated consequences. And one of the powers that they explored with on that show was about finding ways of winning a chess game. Well, let's employ that power to write our laws and explore the unintended consequences, and therefore limit what damages we do in Congress and in our state legislators.
Good points, and the robots won't be paying them money. Tom?
Yes, this is going to be totally huge. I'm in medicine myself, but at any rate, this is going to be totally huge in medicine, just unbelievably huge. The couple points for that is my wife had a very, she's since passed away, but she had a very, very, very rare disease, and it's not hard to diagnose, but almost all doctors don't know. They'll present at a certain disease. For hers would be cardiac heart failure, but it wasn't really cardiac heart failure that was causing the real problem, and so they would just throw their hands up. But in the future, I believe, and I know this will happen, is you'll have an initial diagnosis, and then treat that person as the original diagnosis with the particular medications or what have you. And below that, you're going to have rule out, rule out, rule out. And so if they come back and this particular medication is not working, or their treatment's not working, then they can easily jump to another, to the backup, or even better yet, to suggest another specialist. And the second problem that I see is data. And there's so much data that is proprietary. That's meaning is subject of studies, etc., from all over the world in different universities, and they want to get paid for that. You buy the articles individually, or subscribe to their journals, etc., etc. So if we can get that freed up, then we're going to have all this data come in, and again, like you saw in the videos, it can be congregated together and come up with a more precise decision or conclusion. That's it.
Yeah, some of the articles I've read, they're going to be able to find medicines and cures for diseases that are without it would be years and years off.
Oh
They're
my
going to
God, yeah. I mean, just look at the proteins. The discovery of proteins, where it took so many different years, many years. This will come, this will happen. Also, for surgeons, I graduated from UCSF in San Francisco, and I noticed there was an ad that they were talking about heart surgery, and they can actually, because they can do if they can make actual models, 3D models of what they're doing, what they're going to have to do, and also show the patients this is what we're going to be doing. But more importantly, how with robotic surgery they can get right to the point with pinpoint accuracy. Huge, totally huge.
absolutely.
That's it.
Thank you. Some good points.
I'm all the way from San Francisco, the Golden Gate Computer Society.
Peter, you got something more to add?
Sure, I don't want to dominate here, but imagine the day you're not feeling well. You go visit your doctor, you walk into the exam room, and after a couple of minutes, some human walks into the room and starts talking to you about how, what's not feeling right. And you say, I don't want you. I mean, you're just some guy or lady who sat in a medical school classroom for a few years. I want the AI machine that knows has every piece of medical information ever discovered, and can put it all together a lot faster and better than you can. And it's been nice knowing you, Mr. and Ms. Doctor, but you're outmoded right now. I want the full service machine diagnosing me. If you think that's not coming, wow.
Or the doctor is going to be the good doctors are going to be the ones that can ask the right questions from the patient and then feed the right phraseology and the information back into the AI to get the proper results. And I'm learning this with the different prompts that you can use makes a huge difference in what the outcomes are.
Yeah, we have to learn to look at it as an association, if you will, or a consulting type of thing where we work together to get the information. An interesting use is I don't know if anybody here, well, I'm sure somebody's familiar with the Khan Academy. They make videos over about various educational topics that students can go to, and it'll play it over and over and over and over again and never gets frustrated with you when it shows you things. Well, Sal Khan, who's the originator of the whole series, the second he saw AI come on the scene, he said, we've got to figure a way to get this AI thing to work with our students, not to substitute for them doing the work, but to create ways in which we can create better creative thinking, to create critical thinking, as opposed to just memorizing facts. And he's working with his programs, his videos, to do just that very thing, to make them more use the artificial intelligence as training tool for students, and make them more interactive than just watching a video. So yeah, we have to work with them as partners, if you will. Not that it's going to take over, because there's a human element that's not there yet, and probably will not be for some time. And that's going to require a human doctor. That's going to require a human teacher. Certainly the jobs are going to change, like the president or CEO of Google said. Jobs are going to change, but they're not going to totally disappear. Their requirements are going to change. Their responsibilities are going to change. That's what's going to happen. And so there'll be modifications there that are going to be made, but they're not going to disappear entirely.
Tom?
Yeah, so along with that same idea that was mentioned is the doc's going to have marketing and psychology, so they know they can look at that face and ask the right questions, and we'll have a lot less of the arrogance that a lot of doctors seem to have. I know that I mentioned this type of thing a number of years ago. My wife was being treated at Stanford, and I was talking to a cardiologist, and I was saying just exactly what I said before. You're going to have your initial diagnosis and rule out. And he just looked at me with a blank stare. And he's one of the, he was on the amyloidosis committee. He's very, very, very knowledgeable, extremely knowledgeable. So I think this is where it has to go to, is again, the marketing and psychology. The reason why I say marketing, I was watching a number of years ago this advertisement, and this one gal was sitting down, and she had this poster board with all kinds of posters on it, and she was discussing how we're all a family, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, how did that happen? Well, it's with AI. And one more thing, a little aside, but I was listening to KCBS in San Francisco, and this gal was saying, well, I listen to the radio and there's certain advertisements, and I was looking at the internet, the same internet, and the advertisements were different. Well, we can hone down even smaller than that, advertisements, et cetera. So that's on the somewhat on the scary side, but whatever. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, Diane?
Well, I was just curious when I heard the medical doctor talking. I had one of these surgeries in June. Yeah, and it was a robotic surgery. And tell you the truth, they didn't tell me very much. I had to sign papers that said, well, if the robotics do not work for your particular surgery, then we'll have to make a larger incision. At the time, I didn't feel like I had any choice, and I didn't know the right questions to ask. But that just happened a year ago, and that was uterine cancer. And I Googled it. I looked on the internet. I saw the unit that was being used. But when I came out of surgery, I was in the hospital less than 24 hours, and you wouldn't have known I had surgery other than they told me to take it easy. I had no pain, nothing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. But I became more curious about it afterwards. And I'm kind of sitting here thinking, why didn't I ask more questions? And that might be where the marketing comes in, because I didn't know the questions to ask. When the doctor said robotic surgery, I just said, what's that? And he said, well, it's these little instruments that, we work from across the room, and it's over top of you, and blah, blah, blah. It was very, very vague. Just wanted to pass that on. Has anybody else had any of these surgeries? I mean, I didn't know the questions to ask.
Well, they didn't have, I feel they didn't have the figures that they could show you, the actual models that they could show you, because that was all through MRIs, et cetera, they can't really say that much. So,
right.
And so now I just noticed that they can you can do that because of the 3D mapping, et cetera. So they can bring it out and show you exactly what they're doing, and they didn't have the ability. And this is somewhat of the arrogance too. But once they have these models, they can make the models, and they can have assistants making the models. You know, in other words, we don't have time for that. We can have somebody else make a model for me, and then I can just come in and discuss that with you. And so the right questions to ask is, you know, even when I go to the doctor, what are the right questions to ask? We're supposed to know everything. So it's a little tough.
Right.
And the other thing is, the reason why you got out so quickly is because you have a lesser trauma, because it just went through a little hole. And so instead of having a large incision, et cetera, et cetera. So all this stuff is just totally huge. But again, to reiterate, I think it's going to be easier for the physicians to actually discuss things with you and show you a model, because we can understand that. This is what we're going to do. And it's going to be easy for them, because as they go in the room, they're going to be handed this, and they can go from there. Just an idea. That's
Yeah,
also,
they were anxious to kick me out, and I don't suppose you're interested in knowing the cost.
you didn't have a good insurance because they needed money.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, right.
I'd like to add,
Anyway.
I think the
I
It
main
was a
question, I
lot
think the
of
main
money.
question would be,
experience to yours, Diane. I had my
Pardon?
gallbladder out in 2020, just before the COVID. And they use robotics, but that's not AI. That's just using a small hole in instruments and totally driven by the doctors, you know, who are watching and operating them. And
Oh, okay. Yeah,
they
the one I
explained
saw had a
everything.
screen.
They explained everything to me. They said there were going to be 3 holes. Turns out they had to make 5 because they had trouble finding what they wanted to. But I was delighted with it. I was out very quickly. And
So what's going to happen to that when the robot's doing the surgery and not the human?
That's a good question.
I think the question you want to ask is, instead of all the models and all the interesting paraphernalia, there is, what's the percentage success with the machine as opposed to hands-on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alan, you have your hand up.
Tom, when you're talking about models with holograms, it doesn't even have to be a physical model.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier than a physical model, but that's where it's coming from, is computer holograms. With that, oh yeah, right, okay. Then you put your hands right through it, though. I guess, I don't know. Yeah, robot surgery is not AI. It helps with AI, but you need to have somebody doing the surgery. But on the other hand, just thinking of X-rays and mammograms, and again, I thought that, oh my God, the data from mammograms and with computer generated would be huge, because each and every one that a computer looks at, it adds and adds and adds. And so, in fact, there was a news article again that they looked at this one spot. A doc couldn't even look at it, didn't even notice it. Maybe a faint little red spot, which would be hardly noticeable, and that was precancerous. And so the computer model was able to pick this out, and the patient went in for further examination, and indeed it was cancer. So,
Wow.
and would be, it's treated as, and then, of course, with a very good outcome, because it's found so early. Lots of things, just huge, 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 huge. Oh, since I'm in pharmacology also, is that if you're given a medication, we have, maybe another type of medication, you have to adjust these doses. And so you're going to have dosage that are adjusted, because one medication is going to be increase the effectability of another one. So you have to increase and lower dosages. And also you're going to have to change it, just instead of having the same dosage for all people, being white, colored, wrong word, Asian America, et cetera, female, et cetera, you're going to have different types of dosages. And so that's going to be huge also. Just huge, Because again, one more thing is we all run around, we're thinking of running on 8 cylinders. We run just fine on 5 or 6 cylinders, and we don't really know it. But if we can get you to an optimal blood level on a routine basis, for a daily basis, you're going to help you heal yourself, because now you're running on closer to 8 cylinders. Enough said.
Okay, Alan?
Oops. Hang on a second. I'm in addition to my day job, I'm an adjunct instructor for Eastern Arizona College, and it's a small rural college in almost New Mexico. 2 weeks ago, they offered to all the instructors access to a chat webinar, on ChatGPT, in order to further use it in the classroom and to benefit the students in their educational opportunities. I didn't get to participate because I was at my full-time job, but I thought it was interesting that a school that's basically rural is looking into the future and providing that opportunity to their students through their instructors.
Yeah, education is going to make a big change in some school systems, and educators are going to embrace it. Other ones are going to reject it, and it depends on how they use it. And being a former teacher myself, I was a junior high teacher, and then I did some adjunct teaching on the college level as well. These people are going to have to adjust and work with AI instead of fighting it. But some school systems, like I think it was New York, are telling the teachers to leave it, to stay away from it.
I think they changed that now.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, I think so. I think they went back there. They want them to be cautious, but you have to, like I said, you have to look at it as collaborators. Write your story, write your piece, feed it to the machine, and have it critique you. Have the computer tell you something, and then analyze it yourself and figure out what it's saying. Use it to teach critical thinking skills. Have it create something for the student that's not 100% correct, and then the student has to come up with the problems with the logic, etc. Going out for that first job interview, have the interview with the artificial intelligence. Have it ask you those questions. What are your faults? What are your strengths? What would you do in this situation? The silly kind of questions you get asked at job interviews. Sometimes we forget that young people haven't had those kinds of conversations yet. And this way it gives them an opportunity to try out those answers and create the answers. So look at it as a collaborator.
Some school system, I think it was New York, but I could be wrong about that, passed some rules that students couldn't use AI to write their reports, term papers, stuff like that. And then it was just in the past couple of days that I heard some of the teachers were using AI to grade the reports, and the teachers got in trouble from the administration. I thought that's the funniest AI story I've heard in a while.
That's good.
And it's created a whole new market for folks as well. A 22-year-old grad student created a program called Chat Zero, and what it does is it will analyze your students' term papers and determine whether it was created by artificial intelligence or not. So it's using artificial intelligence to detect whether artificial intelligence or real intelligence was used to create the paper. And it has a pretty good track record, I guess, of determining that.
Anyone else? I was just looking for something that I played with a couple of days ago, and I've got so much of this AI stuff, I can't find it. And what it was that you could put in what you want to create a 3D image, and it will create a 3D image of it. So I put in computer, and I could then take that image and move it all around. It creates a GLB file, which I'd never heard of. And so then I had to go searching for software that would let me play a GLB. And it keeps opening up more doors for me. And I have to keep learning new stuff just to keep up with what they're talking about. And a lot of this stuff's been around for years, but it's all of a sudden it's just flooding because of what this AI is opening up. Stan, I think we can call it close it down and summarize and
fascinating. I want to thank everyone for participating, for attending, and particularly Joe Nowak and Peter. Just wrote your name down and forgot it already. Anyway, it's scary in a way, and if we are not keeping an eye on it and learning about it, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. So thank you for your time. Stay safe. See you next time. And Huey,
bye, everybody. Thank you.
stop the recording, please, and send me